Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Amid tense Mideast negotiations, President Obama meets with American Jewish leaders. A Williamsburg man has a shot at being the New York City Council's first Hasidic member. Moms and experts discuss innovations in bat mitzvahs. Say hello to a Jewish mother from the days of black and white TV. And more of the Jewish news that's changing your world in this webcast version of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Some people say President Barack Obama is Israel's greatest friend, and some say the president is an enemy of Israel. But the president put things in his own words this week when 16 Jewish leaders were invited to meet with Obama for an hour. This meeting comes at a time of fierce debate in the Jewish community about just how much of the American Jewish community supports the president's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Evaluating the response of these Jewish leaders can produce a valuable understanding of whether the mainstream of the Jewish community supports the president's policies. Most of those at the meeting have issued some form of public statement on their sentiments, which have been reported in the Jewish media. Of those who've given their impressions of the meeting with Obama, almost all have expressed solidarity or at least non-opposition to the president's policies on Israel, and particularly his approach to settlements, including some who pundits have expected to criticize the president, such as the ADL's Abraham Foxman and the Conference of Presidents' Malcolm Hoenlein. The lone voice opposing President Obama's policies was the most outspokenly right-wing organization invited to attend, the Orthodox Union, which criticized the president for having a, quote, even-handed approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And while some far-right groups weren't there, like the National Council of Young Israel and the Zionist Organization of America, or ZOA, at least several well-established left-wing groups were also not invited. While there was criticism of the president from some of the more mainstream or centrist leaders, it was a criticism of how Obama speaks of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and not the actual policies that Obama has pushed. The headlines you'll see in many Jewish newspapers this week are therefore inconsistent with what's in the actual articles, so digging a little deeper is helpful. The JTA's headline states, "At White House, U.S. Jews offer little resistance to Obama policy on settlements," where the article reveals no resistance at all on the issue, but only to the president's way of expressing his attitudes. The New York Jewish Week's headline states, "Mild flack for Obama on issue of settlements," where the Jewish leaders quoted in the article don't express disagreement with the president's policy on settlements and actually only criticize the tone of the president's statements. The Republican Jewish Coalition attempted to suggest that media bias was at play in articles like these, citing on its Twitter feed a claim that the JTA story looks at it from Obama's perspective. As an alternative report, the Republican group tried to emphasize a different report from the Jerusalem Post, which carried the headline, "Obama still worries some Jewish leaders." But the Jerusalem Post bases that characterization entirely on one anonymous source whom the newspaper doesn't even claim was at the meeting. For the mainstream Jewish leaders who actually attended, this meeting served as a very valuable litmus test to determine whether the organized Jewish community would be for or against the president's policies. Based on their statements so far, the tenor of these organizations as a whole seems to be in favor of the president's policies. But while much of the Jewish community is thinking globally these days, one Hasidic man is acting locally in his quest to become the elected representative of one very diverse district. Christian Needham reports.
Could this man become the first Hasidic elected official in New York City's history? A few Hasidim have held elected office in other parts of the country that are ultra-Orthodox enclaves, but in New York City, no one Hasidic area is large enough to represent the majority of a district. So if a Hasid gets elected, most of his constituents, and perhaps many of his voters, will be non-Jews. And that's part of what makes community activist Isaac Abraham's bid such a big deal. It's something even his opponents acknowledge.
This is a community that has not had a candidate from that community. I understand that there's a lot of support for his candidacy, and which is something I would expect.
I really like Isaac. I mean, he could really light it up at the forums. I mean, he's great. He's hilarious, but he's on target. He knows the issues. So that's tough. I mean, he's the real deal. My wife actually said, if I were to get knocked out or something out of this race, right? Because I'm not giving up. I'm going to fight. And we got a lot of signatures. But she said she'd probably vote for Isaac.
But can this Hasidic man pull out a victory in a district with constituents ranging from Greenpoint hipsters to Brooklyn Heights elite? The hard numbers might surprise you in the broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. The programmatic elements of a bat mitzvah are nothing new, but for those looking for greater innovation in this rite of passage, Rebecca Honig-Friedman reports on some new ideas.
The bat mitzvah celebration is a relatively new phenomenon in Jewish life, marking the day when a girl becomes a woman in the eyes of Jewish law. Here at the Drisha Institute, a center of learning for Jewish women, a panel of experts, educators, psychologists, and mothers discussed what it takes to make this special day meaningful for all involved.
For girls in Manhattan, the norm is still having a splashy party and reading a speech usually that someone else wrote.
But could the new trend in bat mitzvahs be more substantive? That's what the participants in Drisha's discussion on paths to making a bat mitzvah meaningful are hoping. But what should moms expect from their daughters on the verge of adolescence? These and other issues are discussed in the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Rebecca. If thinking of bat mitzvahs sends you back in time, one blast from the past is making quite an impression in movie houses these days. Margie Rauhat reports.
Hello. I don't know. Hello is such a little word for such a big feeling.
For decades, Gertrude Berg dominated America's airwaves with the series The Goldbergs, among the most highly rated on radio for 17 years, which then went on to be one of TV's first ever sitcoms, where Berg became the first actress to win an Emmy Award and was at one point found to be the second most popular woman in the country. Peabody Award-winning director Aviva Kempner revived Berg's story for a new documentary, Yoo-hoo, Mrs. Goldberg, bringing the life of this entertainment pioneer to the big screen. Gertrude Berg was her era's queen of all media, and her influence extended far beyond her television show.
She had a column that she wrote, she had a clothing line, she had a cookbook, she had a comic strip. So she was, the leader of a media empire and very, very successful. So I would say she was the equivalent of a Jewish Oprah of her time.
To see more from this Jewish Oprah and hear how she won a competition with Eleanor Roosevelt, see the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Margie. Finally, two items in the Jewish blog world are of particular note this week. The humor blog From Satire came up with some information that's of quite a lot of value to those hoping to understand more about Lubavitch messianism. In a post this week, he noted that ChabadMatch.com, much like other dating sites, has all sorts of ways to describe a dater. But the particulars for ChabadMatch.com include beard type, including full, trim, shaved, and picked, what type of Jewish text one's learning, and, most controversially, one's beliefs about the Lubavitcher Rebbe who passed away in 1994. Yes, there's a drop-down menu for Mishachist, a Yiddish-English conflation for the word Messianist. The choices are neutral, not an issue, Yechi, quite Mishachist, and finally, anti. The Yechi choice there refers to the chant Yechi Adonenu Morenu V'Rabbeinu Le'olam Va'ed, which in English means, long live our master, teacher, and rabbi forever and ever, a chant that suggests belief that the Grand Rabbi never actually died. Yechi is also an option in describing the style of one's yarmulke. While the proportion of Lubavitch Jews who are Messianists is a matter of dispute, this site could serve as an opportunity to find out a bit more. And then there's the blog Jewlicious, which celebrated its 5th anniversary this year. Led by David Abitbol, Jewlicious is an influential blog with many Jewish college students and other young people. The blog has leveraged its influence to organize Jewish cultural festivals and push a number of initiatives, such as the Young Leadership Incubator ROI 120, which are having a significant impact on the Jewish community. Congratulations to Jewlicious on reaching this milestone. That's all for this week. For more news and analysis from the Jewish Channel during the week, please check out our blog at newsdesk.tjctv.com. For the full broadcast version of the Week in Review, including additional stories, interviews, and features, please stop by the Jewish Channel on cable. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable, IO Optimum Cable Channel 291, Time Warner Cable Channel 528, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and Cox Cable Channel 1. For more information, visit tjctv.com.